Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much. We have Finance and Technology United on stage, which is awesome.
Always. Exactly.
So I'm going to kick things off with you, Casey. You lead Accenture's global finance organization, which includes strategic planning, financial reporting, a ton of things.
Right.
What are the best use cases that you have for AI in the finance function?
That's a great question, and we have a number of different use cases for AI, and I think the key first thing that we do is we look at what is the right technology for the process that we're talking about. So in some cases, I have a predictive analytics tool that does revenue forecasting. I've had that for years. We're going to enhance that with Gen AI, but we use that today, and that works. I have AI machine learning, again, so good old-fashioned AI, like not necessarily Gen AI, that we use for treasury. That helps us with, we call it the Treasury AI application or platform, and that has helped us identify $600 million of idle cash that I can put to better use. And then now we're looking at Gen AI for different functions. I have a function where we've looked at this for controllership. Again, we're working with clients and internal use cases because I want to be our own best credential. So I'm privileged that we offer this work to clients, so we do it for myself. So I have a unique position. And one of the areas we're working on, for example, is controllership. Everybody closes their books every month and every quarter. Doesn't sound so exciting. But we're able to free up tens of thousands of hours annually based on using Gen AI. Now, that's great, and that's amazing. But the key part is that we also have to then, to really get the most benefit out of that cost savings and efficiency, is we're also looking at the processes that we need to change and the organizational structures that we need to change. So, again, it's AI, it's technology around the continuum of what you need for each tool. That's how we're evaluating it. And it's not just technology. It's, you have to bring the people along with the process and potentially organizational changes.
Now, AI uses large amounts of data. How do you determine the data process in the finance function?
Yeah, so I think, the first thing is, all companies really need to be focused on their digital core. Yeah. And so if I talk about us and then what we're seeing with our clients, right? So the first thing is really what's your data readiness, right? What is your data readiness? We actually have decent, no one's ever done, that's a continued movement, as we know. And then with our clients, they're at different places with their data, right? So some of them have a strong digital core and they're getting ready to move faster. Others now are just really reckoning with the fact that they need to really focus more on their data in their readiness. So we work on that in terms of data readiness. And then we also look at, what is the capital allocation that we have and where do we want to put capital? And I think that's really where we collaborate with my technology partners, both for our clients and as well as for us in terms of how it is that we're going to approach the different use cases that we have.
Now, Tracy, in terms of data that's in your wheelhouse, what is the importance of having the right data structures? I mean, you're going to invest in AI technology, but if you have an ancient system that isn't compatible, how do you manage that within your team?
Well, I mean, when we're talking about artificial intelligence, like whether it's machine learning, kind of more kind of AI, small AI, and then you move into Gen AI, data is the most important thing. But good data in equals good data out. Bad data in equals bad data out, I think, as you know. So it's really important that you're looking at your data. And so one of the things we've been doing, because we've been doing AI for, the last 10 plus years, we're a heavy AI shop. Generative AI is the newer piece, but we have really robust data and model risk governance. And it's taking the time to do all of that analysis up front, make sure you're complying, to compliance, law, rule, reg. You have ethical, checks. For us, it's like fair lending, all of that. And making sure that the data, we understand where it's coming from, the lineage of it, the quality, and that has to be proven before we'll even approve a use case to be deployed or used in production. And we like to go slow to go fast, right? So we do a lot of piloting, we do a lot of checks. So based based on the risk profile of the model that we're using or the use case that we're doing. We go back and we look at the output. Because the other thing you have to be careful on with AI is it's drift, right? As you add additional information into the model, are the decisions coming out of that model changing in a way that you don't agree with or that weren't originally approved, and you have to course correct.
When it comes to generative AI specifically in financial services, it's a highly regulated field. So are there extra measures that you take in regards to safety of information, or is it something that you've already been doing?
Well, we've layered it on top of what we were already doing with AI, but we have set up a generative AI council that includes, legal, risk, compliance. Myself as the head of tech, we're all in there, and we review use cases, and we review it for a lot of different ways. And because generative AI is still so new, and we want to make sure that we're making the right risk-based decisions, we do a lot of piloting first, and then again, we go and we compare results that we thought we would get to the results that we're seeing. And we come back and we look at that a lot. So yeah, we have a lot of extra scrutiny that we've put on it. We also evaluate the use cases themselves, so not just the data, but what is the use case? What are you trying to drive? What models are you using, right? So when you look at generative AI, it's all about data, large language models, and then the computing power needed to run the large language models. Your riskier use case scenarios are when you need to start using some of these external large language models that you're not controlling all the data input into it. And so that's a big point of discussion and review in that generative AI group that we have that reviews everything.
Thank you, Tracy. Casey, in terms of risk, I know in the finance function with generative AI, there's been some kind of hesitancy in some cases. So I'm just wondering, are people still kind of like feeling out their way, finance leaders, in terms of generative AI, or?
Yeah, I think that, it's, I talk to a lot of CFOs because I've talked to a lot of our client CFOs, and there's no question that, AI, Gen AI is viewed, as being very transformative, in technology. So I think everyone has embraced that. And, as I said earlier, really then it's figuring how do I get started and where do I go? And with that, we have designed what we call an AI navigator for enterprises. And what does that do? That helps you take a look at your different industries, and now we're doing it by function. So like for the finance function, we have an AI navigator for the finance function that goes through all the different core processes that every finance organization would do. And you would customize it a little bit for industry, right, too, but there's some core things that all CFOs deal with. And we really look at three things, like at least to start. What's the value case? What then, based on that value case, what is the AI architecture, right? And then what is the AI solution? And then, as we were just talking about how things will get more complicated with large language models and having to switch back and go and decide which avenue do you take for each of these pilots or points of view, we then have what we call an AI switchboard that helps us determine then how would you switch over and make sure that you use the right solution for the problem that you have. And so I think that is a big part of how we're helping ourselves. I spent a lot of time on that. And our view is that for me, I would not take risk in terms of how I run Accenture, but we want to be the leading, company in finance, be our own best credential since we do this as a company. So I am pushing kind of boundaries with the teams that deliver the work to the clients to say, let's see what we can do together, because we can all, they have access to all of our data, and and so it's all we as me. And so that's really I feel very privileged to be able to kind of move and go fast on Gen AI use cases, of which we have dozens that we're working on right now in the finance function.
Are there best practices in kind of measuring the ROI of AI within?
Yeah, I think it does, there are, and I think it really depends on the organization. I do think that the key thing that we look at is, what is the no regrets moves, right? What am I looking at right now? What are the things that we should do, right? What are the things that we should do that will pay for themselves very quickly? But then I call it the second box that we look at, which is what are the more transformative things at scale, right? So they may not be identified right now as a quick win, but really what I'm looking for is at scale efficiencies, risk mitigation, right, cost savings. And I think that's really where it becomes even more interesting as we're all working through our different use cases.
Thank you, Casey. In regard to AI strategy, it can AI is moving quickly. It can change. So that means maybe data structures need to change. How do you scale for growth, Tracy, in this type of environment?
Yeah, I would say it's not, it can change, it will change. It
Yes.
changes almost weekly. I mean, we're seeing, it's just an ever-evolving industry. So from a data perspective, what we're doing is we want to design everything fit for purpose, right? And that's based off the use cases that Casey and I have both talked about. So when a use case comes in, you evaluate it and you say, here's what we think the need is. And that could be the large language model that you're using. Does it require human in the loop kind of review? Do we want to run processes in parallel before we go and deploy things? You know, we're making the right risk-based decision. We're also making the right cost-based decision. So one of the things I mentioned before was compute. So when you talk about these large language models, we have to make a decision. Is that something we want to run internally, or is that something that we want to run on, you know, a public cloud, leveraging one of our partners in our case? So that's really what we're watching. Every time you move data, right, to one of these models, and if you're doing it not in-house and you're moving it to, you know, a public cloud provider, there is a cost associated with that. Sometimes that's needed, but it definitely always has to be a point of consideration, is how I would look at it.
Yeah, and maybe I'd add on one other thing I think as we talk about value is, you know, you really need to look at responsible and ethical AI because that really is a value element too of it. And so as everyone is embracing AI, what they're also realizing is the additional responsibility that comes from the potential ethical implications of the way they choose to do their AI. And really to unleash your value in AI, you really need, in full innovation, you have to have guardrails around that, right? That also, you know, that serve to make sure that you have the trust of your consumers, your employees, and your other stakeholders, right? And so, you know, at Accenture, we really start with responsible and ethical AI. We just named a chief responsible AI officer this week, this position. And we are able to help clients because we've done it to ourselves. I mean, we're global. We have 740,000 plus people. And it is an immense ongoing effort and task to stay along with that. And so, you know, we anchor to our Accenture core values and our code of business ethics, right? And then have a compliance framework, and it's, you know, and also training that goes along with that. So each company has to do that though themselves to define what is their ethical framework, what are their core values, right? Because it could vary by industry, it's, you know, different by company. And I think everyone to really unlock the value and the innovation and to do it in a way that is taking care of people as well, you need to make sure that that's really at the heart of everything that you do.
We've talked, I want to mention, because we've talked about a lot of use cases, and you were talking about use cases even for finance, but I would be remiss if we didn't talk about AI and even generative AI and how it's transforming the technology industry itself and the technologists that develop the solutions, which is a big part of that. That's something I worry about and focus on every day. There's a lot of tools out there that help developers generate code better, faster. Hopefully it reduces risk by improving the quality of the code, making sure there's no gaps in, you know, test scripts, test cases, et cetera. We're also seeing, you know, the potential for value when you're developing user stories or business requirements and the quality of those and how we can help improve the quality of those that we get from business partners. So for me, it's an imperative is how I talk about it with the team. I say the best engineers in the world won't want to work here if we don't give them these tools, because they're available in the industry and it makes them better and it allows them to do what they like to do well, which is develop high quality code and solutions. So we have to give them those solutions. So it's not just about technology delivering solutions for our customers and clients, which is of course top of mind, but the way we do that better is looking at ourselves as a technology organization and how we use AI and Gen AI to transform the way we do our own work.
Speaking, that kind of leads to talent in my mind. So what type of talent are you looking for your organization now that we have all of these advancements to keep up?
Yeah, well, we hire a lot of quants on the model side, of course. That's not as new. But I mean, AI and Gen AI technology hasn't been out there that long. So you can go and hire, talent, but what they have is expertise maybe in a certain technology or a tool, which is great. But then when we put them into our environment, they still need to understand how to, deploy a solution or, deploy a solution for a use case in our environment that's aligned to the business and honestly at the scale and complexity that we operate in. So we found a lot of success just hiring great technology talent. We of course have a robust training program, and we're bringing up our own talent, people who are interested in it, just good technologists. It doesn't matter what technology you know. We can train you on this, and you're kind of learning with us, right? And that's part of the fun. It's actually we're a pretty big, I like to think, we're a pretty big talent draw because we have so many different opportunities. We use a lot of different technology in the space, and our scale and complexity is sexy to kind of top talent who like working in AI and Gen AI. So.
And I think on the talent, if you look at just the finance function itself, we did a survey that said over 70% of CFOs who've worked on transformational efforts, of which all of what we're talking about is clearly transformation, they have to collaborate across 3+ parts of their business, right? So obviously with technology is obviously a no-brainer. That's one of them. So you really need collaborative skills in finance and people who like to collaborate. And we've also shown that the CFOs and their entities who are able to collaborate actually outperform their peers in their industry. So like the way that I organize our team, and I talk a lot about to my CFO peers, is I have a strategy and enablement function, which means I have a group of people who wake up every day and think about what we're talking about. And the lead of that has, I call it a foot in finance and a foot in technology, right? And really just bridges that. There's not a divide, because maybe that was a divide a decade ago, but just is part of both worlds. Because this is so big that you need someone who does wake up. You need people who, in strong leadership, with the ability to make decisions, collaborating across your enterprise to really drive this change. Because the pace of change, as we say, will never be as slow as it is today, right? Everything's just getting faster. And so to do that, you have to empower a team. And I find it highly valuable to have a strategy and enablement function within my finance team that serves as a key linchpin across the organization collaborating.
And it helps the team to say no too.
Yes.
Right? You have to focus your efforts. Things are moving so fast and the technology is moving so fast. You can't have kind of that squirrel mentality where everybody runs and tries to work on all the cool things. You really need to be focused. Pick what aligns to your strategic priorities and your strategy and do them well, or try to.
Right.
Well, that's a great note to end on. Pick what aligns to your strategic priorities.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much for joining us here today.
Thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.